Joining us now is a key border state governor who's dealing with this crisis firsthand, Arizona's Governor Doug Ducey. Sir, thanks so much for taking time out to join us today. You heard there in the reporting from Casey Stiegel that, a lot of the attention right now in the American media, and rightly so, is going to unaccompanied minors. So kids and teenagers who come across the border alone or in groups with other children without parents. But now we're also seeing there is somewhat of a surge, an accompanying surge, in terms of larger groups, families, adults banding together. Talk to us about that problem. We're not really hearing anything about it.
Jillian, we have a real crisis at our southern border. The Biden administration has to take action. These drug cartels are taking complete advantage of the miscommunication that is happening out of the Biden White House. And what is happening is they're celebrating by exploiting these kids, and the drug cartels, the human trafficking, the sex trafficking is all part of this migrant surge. So we need action at the border. The Border Patrol and CBP need support. Our county sheriffs need support. And the Biden administration has been completely divorced from the reality that is happening at the southern border. It would be nice if President Biden, Vice President Harris, or Secretary Mayorkas would come see us in Arizona.
So on that point, Governor, President Biden himself has drawn a very stark line in the sand on this issue of the surge of unaccompanied minors. He says he's not going to leave children and teens on the Mexican side of the border essentially stranded. Take a listen to what he said the other day.
The idea that I'm going to say, which I would never do, that if an unaccompanied child ends up at the border, we're just going to let him starve to death and stay on the other side. No previous administration did that either, except Trump. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
What do you say to that, sir?
Well, what I think President Biden doesn't understand is the situation at the border was largely stable. But when he raised his hand and said there's free health care for anyone that illegally crosses the border, when he reversed the MPP protocols, when he stood down on Title 42, what he did was invite parents to put their children on this dangerous journey. And while these are humanitarian words, this is not a humanitarian result that is happening at the border. And with nearly 18,000 migrant children and thousands more on the way, the federal government needs to take action and reverse these policies and work with the governors at the state level so that we can stop this surge of activity.
So, Governor, if President Biden took your advice, right, and he reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy tomorrow, what would happen to the children and the teens stuck on the Mexican side of the border? Would they kind of live happily ever after, or are they now going to be facing, now that they're here, are they going to be facing increasing threats from the same kind of folks you mentioned, cartels, sex traffickers, coyotes? I guess what happens to them now that they are here if they can't come into the United States? I'm not really hearing that addressed.
Well, President Biden needs to work with the Mexican president, AMLO Lopez Obrador. He has called President Biden the migrant president. He says this miscommunication is actually enticing people to make the dangerous journey. President Trump did so much at the border. Like I said, it was largely solved. It was much more stable. Now, with the stopping of construction, there's parts of the border that are now wide open and unprotected. We need to work with the Mexican president. Of course, we need to work with folks in the Northern Triangle. But these policies are resulting in the crisis that we have today, and we need action immediately. Of course, we have a humanitarian crisis, and we can care for these kids, but we need to stop this surge, and the action has to happen at the federal level.
What about, sir, the cost of all of this? Senator Blackburn was on our air the other day. She said there's this really hefty price tag that ICE and DHS is now incurring as they look for new and sort of innovative ways to get kids out of these detention centers and into safer spaces. Take a listen. I'll get your response. Oh, I'm going to read it to you. Sorry. This is from Senator Blackburn. She says this raises questions of half of the $86.9 million in ICE contract proceeds will likewise be allocated toward employee and executive compensation instead of migrant services or housing as the current contract stands. The cost to taxpayers for housing 1,200 migrant families for 6 months is about $71,000 per person, or for a family of 4, that amounts to a shocking $284,000, enough to buy a small house. So this is her reacting to the news that the Biden administration is looking to house some migrant families in hotels. What's your response, sir?
Well, I'm troubled by their plans. It's not only the plans to put people in hotels, it's the plans to displace foster children in state places where they would pay nearly double to put these migrant children in these homes and third-party providers. So they need to get their policy straight. I don't know why they stopped the physical barrier, the wall, and the surveillance on our southern border. When they did that as well, they put 500+ people out of jobs in Douglas, Arizona, while the border's open there, and State Route 2 is a stone's throw away from Douglas, and people are coming through the openings there as well.
Governor, we got to leave it there, but we really appreciate you taking time out of this critical mission you're working on now to join us, give us some perspective on the situation. We wish you Godspeed going ahead, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Jillian.